I thought I had the perfect life. My house was warm, our marriage seemed happy, and Emily, she was everything I ever wanted. The way she laughed, the way she'd curl up on the couch beside me after work, even the little habits, like leaving her shoes by the door. They all felt like home. We had been married for 4 years, and in those years I had never once questioned her. She seemed honest, loving, and devoted. Our neighbors admired us. Friends envied the way we were always together, always laughing, always planning a future. I felt lucky every single day. But luck is fragile. It started with small things, almost invisible at first. She'd stay late at work, telling me it was just extra hours. I never minded. I trusted her. Then there were the tiny whispers of excuses that didn't quite make sense. Oh, the meeting ran late. Or, I had to help a coworker with a project, she would say, and I'd nod, smiling, because I wanted to believe. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. I had hoped to surprise her, maybe grab a late dinner together. As I entered the living room, I noticed the TV was off, which was strange. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open. At first glance, everything seemed normal, until I caught a glimpse of a chat window. A man's name flashed at the top. Mark. My heart stopped. I froze for a moment, hoping it was nothing. Maybe a coworker? Maybe a harmless message. But then I saw it. The words were intimate, casual, yet filled with emotion that should have belonged to me. Mark, I can't wait to see you tonight. Emily, me neither. Can't wait. I backed away slowly, my chest tightening. The air felt heavy, thick with betrayal. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't want to react without knowing the full story. But a seed of doubt had been planted, one that would grow and twist until it consumed every bit of trust I had in her. Days went by. I tried to act normal. I smiled at her, joked about work, tried to forget the message I'd seen. But the nagging suspicion was always there. The little things now seemed larger, heavier. Late nights, secretive texts, the way she laughed at her phone, hiding the screen as soon as I came near. Then came the night that changed everything. I came home from a business trip earlier than expected. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked to our bedroom and froze. There, on the bed, was her perfume, the one she used for me, but it smelled different, heavier, lingering in a way that told me she wasn't alone. I checked my phone. A notification popped up, a selfie sent to her from Mark. She smiled in it, holding a coffee, leaning close to him, right under my roof, right under my eyes. My stomach dropped. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or run. I just sat there, shaking, letting the reality sink in. The woman I loved, the one I trusted more than anyone, was living a secret life with another man, in the house we shared. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to think about what I would do next. All I knew was that the world I had built, the life I had loved, had just crumbled in silence. And I realized something terrifying. Betrayal doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't knock before it enters your home. It simply takes what it wants. The days after that discovery felt like living underwater. Every sound in the house, the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, even her footsteps, felt amplified, like they were echoing through my chest. I couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep, and the hardest part was pretending everything was normal when she was around. Emily acted as if nothing had changed. She smiled at me over breakfast, asked about my day, laughed at the silly jokes I made. Each word, each gesture, felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but I knew I had to be careful. Anger without proof would get me nowhere, and she had a talent for deflection that I had already seen. I started observing her. At first, I tried to convince myself it was paranoia, but patterns became impossible to ignore. She started leaving the house just as I got home from work, claiming errands or long meetings. Her phone was always face down, vibrating more than usual, and she would hide it the moment I looked at her. I knew I couldn't rely on my gut alone anymore. I needed proof, concrete evidence. One evening, when she went out claiming a girls' night, I stayed behind. I checked her phone, carefully, without touching anything that might alert her. A few messages popped up immediately from Mark. The conversation was casual on the surface, but full of subtle affection, jokes, and plans to meet. My chest tightened with every line. Mark, can't wait to see you later. Emily, me too. I'll make sure he's gone. My hands went numb. The he had to be me. I realized then that she wasn't just cheating emotionally. She was planning. Every lie, every excuse had a purpose. My home, my life, the very foundation I had trusted. It was all being undermined from the inside. That weekend, I decided to follow her. I borrowed a friend's car to avoid being recognized. I parked a block away from the cafe she had mentioned in a message and waited. It felt like hours, though it was probably only 15 minutes, until she arrived. She looked happy, carefree, completely unaware that I was watching. A few moments later, a man approached, tall, confident, unmistakably him. Mark. They hugged, whispered, and laughed. She leaned close, her hand brushing against his. I felt my stomach drop. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. I wanted to storm in, to confront them, to demand answers. But I didn't. I just watched, recording every detail in my mind, letting the shock and pain simmer into determination. After that day, I stopped pretending ignorance. I started documenting everything. Times she left the house, the little patterns in her behavior, screenshots of messages, photos when I could get them. I didn't act out of revenge yet. I acted out of survival, to understand the depth of her betrayal before it consumed me entirely. She noticed the change in me almost immediately. I was quieter, more observant, distant. She tried to engage me, asking about work, making small jokes, but I barely responded. I could see the tension in her eyes, that flicker of guilt that only appears when someone knows they've been caught, even without proof being shown. One night, I confronted her. Carefully, indirectly. I feel like you've been hiding something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She laughed nervously, touching my arm. What? Jason, you're imagining things. I've been working so much lately, I don't have time for anything else. I looked at her carefully, noting every twitch, every hesitation. Really? Her eyes darted away. She smiled again, but it was forced. Really? You're just stressed. That night, I went to bed alone in our room. She didn't even notice. And I realized something. She could lie effortlessly, charm effortlessly, but I had something she didn't. Clarity. I had truth on my side, even if it was hidden for now. The plan was simple. Wait, observe, gather proof. Then, confront her with undeniable evidence, not just for my own justice, but to protect myself from further deception. Betrayal is silent, sneaky, and sharp, but so is determination. And I was ready to fight, not with anger, but with truth. The day I finally caught them red-handed started like any other, but I had a plan. I knew Emily would leave the house around noon, and I knew where she was going. I parked a few blocks away from the small park near the cafe where she often met Mark. I kept my distance, my heart pounding, my eyes fixed on the entrance. It wasn't long before she appeared, dressed casually, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked around nervously, then spotted him. Mark. He smiled, and her face lit up in a way that once made my chest ache with love, now only burned me with betrayal. They sat on a bench, leaning close, whispering, laughing quietly. I didn't need to hear their words to know the truth. This wasn't work. This wasn't friendship. It was everything I had feared. I took out my phone and started recording. Every laugh, every glance, every touch. My hands were shaking, but I didn't care. This wasn't about revenge yet. It was about proof. Proof that she had been lying, hiding, betraying me for months. After 20 minutes, they stood up and walked toward a nearby motel. My stomach turned. Right under my roof, she had been living a secret life, and now the evidence was clear. I drove slowly behind them, keeping my distance, until they entered the motel. When I got home that evening, the house felt different. Every photo, every little reminder of our life together felt like a lie. I sat in the living room, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the little signs I had ignored. The next morning, Emily acted as if nothing had happened. She smiled, made coffee, asked about my day. I said nothing. I couldn't. Days passed, and I collected more evidence. Screenshots of messages, timestamps, photos, everything she thought I would never see. It was painful, but necessary. I needed to understand how deep the betrayal went before confronting her. Then came the confrontation. I waited until she returned from work one evening. I stayed calm, tried to make my voice sound casual. "Emily," I said quietly. She looked up, surprised. "We need to talk." Her face changed immediately. Fear, guilt, panic, all in a moment. "About what?" she asked, voice shaking. I took a deep breath. "I know everything. The meetings, the late nights, the messages with Mark, the motel visits. I have proof of all of it." Her eyes widened. "Jason, Don't," I interrupted, my voice firm. "Don't try to explain. I trusted you completely, and you betrayed me right under my roof. Every lie, every secret, every hidden smile. It ends tonight." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I never stopped loving you. It just happened." I shook my head. "Happened? You planned it. You hid it. You let it continue. You made a choice. And now it's my turn to make mine." For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm. The anger, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it was all there, but beneath it was clarity. I knew what I had to do. "I need space," I said. "You need to leave. Pack your things, and don't come back until you've figured out who you really are." She fell to her knees, sobbing. "Please, Jason, I'll do anything. I'll leave him. I'll end it. Just don't leave me." I stood silently, looking at her. I wanted to feel something. Rage, forgiveness, anything. But all I felt was resolve. "You chose him. You made your decision. Now live with it. I'm done being your safety net." That night I went to the bedroom where we had shared so many memories, closed the door behind me, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not for her, not for the marriage I thought I had, but for the life I thought I deserved. For the first time, I realized that betrayal wasn't just about someone else's actions. It was about reclaiming your own life from the damage they caused. The days after Emily left were a blur of silence and emptiness. The house felt cold, hollow, every corner echoing memories that now only brought pain. I kept myself busy, throwing myself into work, reconnecting with friends I had neglected, and taking long runs in the park where I once walked with her. Every step, every breath was a reminder that I needed to rebuild, not just survive. I didn't answer her messages. I didn't answer her calls. She left dozens of texts, apologies spilling out in desperate waves. "Please, Jason, I made a mistake. I ended it with him, I swear. Can we talk? I love you. I don't want to lose you." I deleted them all. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew replying would only drag me back into a storm I wasn't ready to weather. Healing required distance, and for the first time, I embraced it. Friends became my lifeline. Tom, my oldest friend, insisted on checking in daily. "You can't rush this, man," he said one night over beers. "But don't let her control your life anymore. She made her choice. You get to make yours." I nodded, grateful. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let betrayal define me. I wasn't going to let anger or heartbreak dictate my future. I would rebuild my life, stronger and wiser, one step at a time. I began with small things, clearing out closets filled with reminders of her, repainting the living room, rearranging furniture. Each change felt symbolic, a statement that this space was mine and I would no longer let it be tainted by lies. Weeks passed. I started going out again, meeting people, even casually dating. Nothing serious yet, but just stepping back into the world reminded me that life didn't end because someone else broke their promise. Then came the unexpected. Emily showed up at my office one rainy afternoon. I didn't see her enter. When I turned from my desk, there she was, soaked, hair plastered to her face, eyes red from crying. "Jason," she whispered. I didn't move. I didn't respond. "I need to explain," she said, her voice shaking. "I was wrong. I know I broke everything. I can't ask for forgiveness, but I can't just leave things like this. I ruined us." I took a deep breath. "You already did. And you can't fix it with words." Her shoulders slumped. "I ended it with him. I really did. And I started therapy. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment I felt something, a flicker of the old love, buried under layers of pain. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. "I appreciate that you're trying to change," I said calmly, "but that doesn't undo the choices you made. I can't risk going back to that." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Please, I'll do anything." I shook my head. "You already had your chance. I have to live my life now, alone, if I have to. I have to be strong for me." She nodded, finally understanding. She left quietly, and I felt a strange sense of closure. Not happiness, not yet, but a deep, steady calm. Over the following months, life slowly regained color. I moved to a new apartment, smaller but brighter, filled with light and reminders that this life was mine. I painted again, ran again, laughed again, small victories that slowly stitched the pieces of me back together. And somewhere in the quiet, I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't always end with punishment. Sometimes it ends with freedom. Sometimes the person who hurt you most gives you the chance to discover your own strength. Emily's absence no longer felt like loss. It felt like liberation. I had survived her lies, her choices, her betrayal, and in doing so, I had reclaimed myself. It had been almost a year since Emily left. The house that once echoed with arguments, laughter, and betrayal now felt like a sanctuary, quiet, warm, and entirely mine. I had finally started to sleep through the night, without nightmares creeping in, without the constant replay of her lies in my head. Life had begun to flow again. I had a new apartment, smaller but brighter, filled with light streaming through the windows. I had started painting again, something I hadn't done since before the marriage. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I thought was lost. I reconnected with old friends, people who reminded me of who I was before I gave so much of myself away. Then came Claire. She wasn't like Emily. She was steady, kind, and genuine. She laughed easily and didn't hide her phone or her plans. With her, life felt simple, safe, real. We didn't rush things. I didn't want to. After everything I had been through, I knew the value of patience and trust. One rainy afternoon, as Claire and I walked through the park near my old house, I spotted Emily across the street. She looked different, thinner, quieter, and alone. She glanced my way, and our eyes met. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. She smiled faintly, a mixture of sadness and regret, and then looked away. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the old longing. I just felt peace. That evening, as Claire and I cooked dinner in my new apartment, I realized how far I had come. Betrayal had once felt like a crushing weight, a storm I could never escape. But surviving it, learning from it, and moving forward had given me something even stronger: freedom. Weeks later, I heard from a mutual friend that Emily had moved out of the city. She had lost her job after months of distraction, and her relationship with Mark had ended badly. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not in revenge, but in the natural consequences of her choices. Life had a way of balancing itself, and sometimes the universe handles karma better than anyone could. I didn't dwell on it. I didn't need to. My focus was on the present, on rebuilding, growing, and cherishing the people and experiences that were honest and true. I had survived the betrayal, but more importantly, I had learned that my life was mine to live, unshackled from the past. One evening, as the sun set over the city, I sat on the balcony with Claire, sipping tea and watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. I breathed in the cool evening air and whispered to myself, I made it. I survived. And now I'm finally free. Freedom didn't come from her leaving or from punishment. Freedom came from reclaiming my own heart, my own life, and learning that betrayal, as painful as it is, can also be the catalyst for the strongest, most unshakable version of yourself. And for the first time in years, I smiled, fully, completely, without the shadow of hurt lingering behind it. I had lost her, but I had found me. Months had passed since Emily vanished from my life. At first, her absence felt like an empty void, heavy and suffocating, a wound that throbbed with every memory. But as the weeks turned into months, that pain slowly faded, replaced by a quiet space I hadn't had in years. A space to breathe, to think, to grow, and to rebuild the life she had tried to take from me. I discovered something I hadn't realized before. Losing someone who betrays you doesn't just hurt. It can also open a path to your own freedom. Claire entered my life slowly, like a gentle sunrise that fills the room with warmth without announcing itself loudly. She wasn't a replacement for Emily. She wasn't trying to patch up the holes in my heart. She was something entirely new, something honest and real. We spent weekends exploring new places, trying hobbies I had abandoned, laughing at silly things without fear of judgment or betrayal. Every shared smile and small adventure reminded me that life could be simple again, that happiness could exist without manipulation or lies. One evening, as I was organizing old papers in my apartment, the apartment I had slowly made my own, with walls freshly painted, shelves arranged just the way I liked, and spaces filled with memories I chose to keep, I found a letter Emily had left behind, addressed to me. I hesitated before opening it, my heart thumped, memories flooding back. Part of me didn't want to read it, but curiosity won. Her handwriting was shaky, hesitant, as though every word had been weighed 1,000 times. Jason, I don't expect you to read this, and I certainly don't expect forgiveness. I made choices that hurt you beyond measure, and I lived every day with regret. I lost not only the man I loved, but the trust of the person I once promised my life to. I hope you find happiness, because I never deserved it with me. I am truly sorry. I read it twice. My chest tightened, but not in the way it used to when she betrayed me. It was a calm, reflective tightness, the kind that comes when you see the truth, acknowledge it, and then let it go. I folded the letter back and placed it in the drawer. For the first time, I realized that her words didn't carry power anymore. They could not hurt me. She had held control over me with lies, secrets, and manipulation, but that control ended the moment I chose to reclaim my life. Life continued, slowly but steadily. I focused on work, pouring my energy into projects I had ignored for too long. I reconnected with old friends, people who reminded me of who I had been before the marriage, before the betrayal, before the lies. I allowed myself to enjoy simple pleasures again, cooking meals without stress, reading books without distraction, laughing without feeling guilty. Each small act felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried under pain. Claire became a constant in my life, not because I needed someone to fill Emily's shoes, but because I was ready to experience something genuine. She wasn't perfect. No one is. But she was honest, kind, and present. With her, life felt grounded. I didn't rush love or chase perfection. Instead, I learned to appreciate the quiet, steady moments. Walking in the park at sunset, cooking together, sharing dreams late into the night. These moments reminded me that trust wasn't fragile if it was built on truth. Months later, I heard from a mutual friend that Emily had moved out of the city. Her relationship with Mark had ended badly, and she had lost her job after months of distraction and poor performance. Part of me felt a quiet, inevitable satisfaction, but it wasn't revenge. It was simply the natural outcome of the choices she had made. Life has a way of balancing itself, and I didn't need to interfere. The universe had done its work, and I could finally let go of any lingering bitterness. I thought a lot about forgiveness during that time. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about letting her back into my life. It wasn't about excusing the pain she caused. True forgiveness was about releasing myself from the chains of anger, resentment, and heartbreak. I couldn't control her actions, but I could control how I responded to them. And I chose peace. One evening, as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, I sat on my balcony with Claire, sipping tea and watching the world turn golden. The breeze carried the faint scent of flowers from a neighbor's balcony, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at ease. I whispered to myself, I made it. I survived. I am free. Emily's chapter in my life was closed. The pain she caused had forged me into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I had survived the betrayal, rebuilt my life, and discovered an important truth. Sometimes losing the wrong person is the first step to finding yourself. Sometimes the betrayal you fear will break you is exactly the thing that teaches you how to stand again. I looked at Claire, smiling warmly at me, and I felt a deep gratitude. Life was no longer about what I had lost. It was about what I had gained. The lessons, the strength, the freedom, and the ability to trust again. Betrayal had tested me, but it hadn't destroyed me. It had prepared me for a life I hadn't dared to imagine before, a life full of honesty, love, and peace. And as I closed my eyes that night, listening to the soft hum of the city below, I realized something powerful. Surviving betrayal doesn't just teach you about others, it teaches you about yourself. It teaches you that no one can take your life from you unless you allow it. And I hadn't. I had survived, I had rebuilt, I had found myself, and now, finally, I was free.